Today we're going to talk about the narcissistic person who gets a splinter and acts like it's a tumor. You know the type. Anything that happens to them, they will use it for attention, but specifically medical stuff. What is that about? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Waking Up from Narc Abuse, a micro podcast by Alana Sanborn. This is a micro podcast. It's meant to start your thoughts flowing. It's meant to be the beginning of a conversation, a dialogue, not a monologue. Because we're talking about something that's pretty heavy, my hope is that shorter episodes that are easier to digest will help you without overwhelming you. And here is today's show. There's a special kind of con that some narcissists do that is really egregious. It's when they pretend to be ill to garner your attention, devotion, and coerce you into pushing past your own limits. Need an example? Okay, I got one for you. I was working with a couple whose child was pretty sick. She wasn't hospitalized at the moment, but had been in the past. The mom kept a pretty active Facebook account, and she did talk about their sick daughter. But you know what she talked about more? The suspicious lump in her neck. The rash she had to have looked at, the autoimmune illness she was sure she'd be diagnosed with soon. From the outside, it sure looked like she was one-upping her own child's health issues, scrambling for the attention she felt she deserved more than her child. And she got it, too. People helped her get to the doctor appointments she needed, set up meal trains, offered words of encouragement whenever she posted another photo or update. The most serious types of illness fakeries come with a special diagnosis. Either factitious disorder or Munchausen syndrome, and usually a personality disorder to go with them. We won't go too far into these diagnoses, but what you need to know about them is that they involve making up completely illnesses or symptoms of illnesses. And sometimes, in the worst cases, they involve making oneself have the symptoms in a way that actually makes you sick. People can die from this syndrome, and it's very tricky. So when I speak about someone who's exaggerating their health issues, it's different from someone who's completely fabricating their health issues. Just wanted to make that nuance clear. So we're not talking about that level of scheming necessarily. This person did really have these symptoms. She just exaggerated the severity to the point where she could get attention and sympathy any chance she got. You might have also heard the term malingering, which is also about faking illnesses. Usually that one is for like Social Security benefits or some kind of, maybe you get pills from it. It's usually some kind of tangible gain. This is also different than what I'm speaking about. Narcissists are tricky because a lot of times they do stuff that's like under the radar. You can't prove it. There's no way to point it out without them saying you're making things up. They're smart like that. So this is also not really malingering. We're talking about people who see an opportunity to get attention from even the smallest nicks or cuts. I find it despicable because, like many schemes the narcissists employ, it preys on the kindness in the people around them. It exploits compassion and turns it into a transaction that fills up their empty piggy bank until they are satisfied and move on. Meanwhile, the compassionate person is emptied out. In the best case scenarios, the compassionate folks never really know they've been had. In the worst cases, they realize it was all a con and they've been used and discarded, and it truly hurts. In fact, sometimes it turns compassionate, kind, giving people into distrusting, reserved, cold ones, which, in my opinion, is really unfortunate. I personally had an experience where someone's health condition was so dire that I thought the things they asked for could make their last days better, and I was happy to do those things. I thought, if they die tomorrow, I don't want to regret not being there for them. This narcissistic person knew they could exploit this in me to the nth degree. They pushed and pushed until I was wondering, why haven't they died yet? In this case, the person probably did have factitious disorder or Munchausen. I'm not sure if they were making themselves sick or just pretending to be sicker than they were, or were never sick at all, and it was all a lie. I'll never know. But they had me on a fishing hook and were just stringing me along for months while the hole in my lip gaped and I struggled to keep up with their ruse. The damage done by this kind of con is really sad. Like I said before, when someone exploits your best qualities, you tend to want to put them away and never bring them out again. It's a normal reaction, but isn't the world a worse place for it? When we become distrustful and scared of being kind, the world is not a nice place to be. When we retract from reaching out to our fellow humans, we all suffer. And people who prey on our kindness and soft hearts ruin it for the rest of humanity. Have you ever heard of a man cold? It's a joke about how everyone in a family, for example, can have the same virus, but as soon as the man in the house gets it, he's dying. He's got it so bad, he can't function. Meanwhile, the woman who had it days before continued working, making meals, cleaning, etc. She was fine. She just lived with it. Well, I think there's something called the narc cold. When a narcissist gets sick or even a whiff of some kind of ailment, they will play it up and become a victim in need. I often say that narcissists only know how to play two archetypes, the hero and the victim. They will be either one of those, usually two extremes, but never in between. Never a bystander, never someone who is neutral. If they can get some attention from a situation, they will play up their role in it to a large degree every time. In a narcissist world, the roles we play are very simplified. Hero, villain, victim. They will never claim to be the villain. They will always claim to be the hero or victim in a story. But the truth is, they are almost always the villain. And not only are they the villain, but they claim to be the victim or hero and put the villain role onto someone else. It's a very confusing game they play, moving people around like chess pieces without their consent. So inflating some symptoms to make them seem more dramatic and life-altering is right up a narcissist's alley. They get attention and sympathy. Meanwhile, they're probably fine, but it gives them carte blanche to do whatever they really want to do, be it laze around and not work, appear helpless and then get to overcome obstacles later and be congratulated, or whatever their goal is. Sometimes they just want to see how far you'll go to take care of them. This is where being a people pleaser or a codependent person will be your downfall every time. Again, ask me how I know. Think about the narcissist in your life. Do they act like they're dying when they sprain their ankle? Do they need excessive help when they have a sniffle? Are they definitely suffering when they cut their finger and need someone to watch their kids or make them food or have to call in sick to work for several days? Or maybe they can't work at all and you have to. When you think about this person, do you notice that they use every opportunity they have to gain something from you or in general? Can you see that they are always looking for ways to take advantage of situations and do what they really want to do? They manipulate anything that comes their way to be beneficial to them somehow. Think twice before you give in to their calls for support and sympathy. When you see that it's a pattern and they don't often seem appreciative, nor do they seem to notice how often they are asking for help versus offering help, it's time for a little side eye instead of jumping up to their rescue. It's a game they're playing, and whether you like it or not, you're a piece on their game board. Unless you start trusting your gut and saying no to them, you won't get off this ride. And isn't it time to be done with this pattern? Now, I want to be super clear. This is not a generalization about anybody who has chronic health issues or symptoms in general. This is a very specific creature who takes something and exaggerates it to the point where they get some kind of need met that is exploitative of you. This is not someone who has needs in general. This is not someone who you care about who has a hard life. No, this is something very different. And you're going to have to look at the patterns and trust your instincts on whether the person that I'm describing here is the person that you're thinking of. And once you've figured out that this person is actually using you and not in true need, then it's time to employ some boundaries. The problem with saying no to someone who's playing up a health issue is that you look and feel like the asshole. And they know that. They know that your kind self doesn't want to turn away from someone in need. This is a narcissist's greatest trick in the book, I think, is to be someone you can't say no to because you don't want to look or feel bad. They will use that forever. And you might notice they get better instantly when you ignore it, or they move on to something else. So pay attention. What happens if you say no or are busy or can't help them with something? Does it go away? Do they find someone else? What happens? Do they catastrophize it and then your relationship is a mess for a while? Just pay attention to the patterns and try different types of responses so that you can see what they do in response. Then you'll kind of get a heads up on their game. You can kind of see where their pattern goes once you assess it. Getting out of these situations isn't so much about being like smarter than the narcissist or figuring them out, because honestly, we never will. Never. So don't try. It's more about listening to your body, listening to your anxiety or your instincts, your gut, whatever you want to call it, that's telling you something is off, something's wrong. And sometimes it's just plain listening to how tired you are, especially if it's someone who's milking their opportunity to be sick and play the patient. You might be freaking exhausted from being their caretaker or from jumping through hoops to make sure they have what they need, when really they're probably just playing video games or watching TV and doing fine, but they really like someone else making their meals or cleaning their room. So pay attention to how you feel. If you feel like you're being used, you're being used. Trust your gut, okay? All right. I'd love to hear your stories about medical stuff and how it plays out in narcissistic relationships. It's a little bit fascinating, quite a bit horrifying, and definitely despicable, truly. Especially when there are people in actual need and they might lose out because someone else is pretending, again, that their splinter is a tumor. So I hope you don't know anyone like this. And if you do, I hope this helps to hear that you're not imagining things. It's a thing. So until next time, good luck out there and do take care of yourself.